Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Ni hao, buenos dias, hesiche, aquaba, vepunin. What up, though? This is Cafe Melange, week numero 8, session numero 4, la fin de la semaine. And I have to work on the lighting joint because it goes in and out. Fix the color up, get tidy up, it's spiffy, it's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring, bumped his head and he went to bed, and he couldn't get out till the morning. So today is story day. I'm trying to figure out how the lighting joint does this thing, because if I stay like this for the rest of the joint, maybe. Alright. So we're going back to this joint. What are you? Yeah, I just read this, so I'm gonna read it again. And let's see something. It's somewhat distracting. It is. I ain't got a tripod of none of them things. There's guano gifts about, so I'm being mindful of that. Angles, do angles work? Angles don't work. These are things to figure out before recording, typically. But it's part of the experience. If I keep it like this. Oh, I'm going to be acrobatic. 2 hands. Can we do it like that? What about that and that and that and that and this and that and this and that and this and that? It seems to be steady. Alright. Right. Is that me bowing my head and you go dark? It's like, it's right there. It's tantalizing. Let's see if this will work. Slide. Alright. Is that going to work? Work enough? Alright. So, yeah, it's raining. Otherwise, we'd be out on the front. So, we are where we are. So, we got another one of these stories. It's a story from, again, this is a book of like testimonials or just like first-person narratives, biographical descriptions of the being mixed by young people 20 years ago. So they're my age these days. I guess in those days too. But still very relevant, and I'm going to save the commentary until afterwards. So the story that we're featuring today is the one of this brother, Saladini Ali Ahmed, who is 22, from Dearborn, Michigan, in the land of Miami, near Boston, Ojibwe, Chippewa, additionally. His mor is European American, Irish, and his stepmor is European American. His far is Arab American. Oh, this is making me sit up straight now. Alright, so this is what he says from my translation. Here we go. I grew up in Detroit and in Dearborn, which is adjacent to Detroit and has the largest Arab population outside of the Middle East. I grew up in the south end of Dearborn, which is about 90% Arab. We were 2 blocks from Henry Ford's main plant, the River Rouge plant, his first big factory. That was the dominating presence in the neighborhood. It is a truly interesting place because there are all these Arabic stores and a big mosque with a big green dome juxtaposed against this big, ugly industrial zone. Most of the people in the neighborhood were immigrants, pretty poor, and worked at the car factory. We moved from that part of Dearborn to the east end of Dearborn. The east end is still majority Arab, probably about 60 to 70%, but it is mainly Lebanese and mainly merchant class people as opposed to laborers. My far was born in Brooklyn. His mor was born in Lebanon. His far was born in Egypt and came over here to sell Arabic language records. My mor was Irish. She passed away when I was about 7 and my far met another woman. She had 3 kids of her own from her previous marriage. She was also white and her kids were white and they became my stepbrothers and my stepsister. And then my far and my stepmor had a child together. Our family is a truly interesting combination. I'm fairly light-skinned. If I'm in Detroit, the racial dynamics tend to get broken down into this weird black-white binary. So white people and black people assume that I'm white until they hear my name, and then I'm something weird that's not black or white in their eyes. But then in Ann Arbor, where people are used to people with a lot of different backgrounds, people tend to be further conscious of the fact that I'm probably something other than European. People don't confront me because of the way I look. Sometimes I'll be wearing an Arabic scarf or something that marks me, and then people get nervous. If somebody sees my name written down, they recognize, oh, he's something else, Arabic or Muslim or whatever. And then I have to deal with all of that baggage and the ignorance that people have. Mind you, this is before the 11th of September, 1999, thereabouts. Then I have to deal with all the baggage and the ignorance that people have. People start asking questions about terrorism or the way women are treated in Islam, based on the stereotypes that are prevalent about Arabs. That's happened a lot, especially in Detroit, where there's a truly visible Arab community. People would make comments, these people smell bad, or they're rude, or they have too many kids, or whatever. I used to just say, well, I'm Arab, and then let it go. But now whenever I hear people say something like that, I won't let them get away with much. I'll kind of start hollering. My far is fairly dark. Around his neighborhood, people know he's Arab. He and I got chased out of a bar in Kentucky one time. We went up to the counter to get a drink, and the bartender said, "Look, we don't want any trouble, but we truly don't like Mexicans here." And it was like this bar full of nice old boys. So we decided to make a strategic exit. We weren't going to tell them, no, we're actually camel jockeys. Because I'm light-skinned, I don't deal with that kind of raw confrontation very often. So it made me angry. After a while, it was just humorous. I think my dad's further used to that kind of stuff than I am. My dad and I talk about it quite a bit, actually. He used to work at the Ford factory, and whilst he was working there, he, along with some other people in the community, started up this community center for Arab immigrants. He was involved in a lot of social movements. He knew a lot of people who were Black Panthers or American Indian movement people. My dad's friends were of all races, and so he's very conscious of racist stuff, and I was raised with a lot of those liberal and or radical ideas about race. I started to think further about race in high school. I read Malcolm X and a lot of different stuff that had to do with race and racism, and I think I started trying to figure it out. There were different things that happened during high school, the Gulf War, the LA riots, and some other things, where race was prevalent in the way they were discussed in the media. So I think I started trying to figure out where I fit in with these concepts that were being discussed on TV. A lot of ugly racism came out around the Gulf War. I remember some little poster that some kids stuck up around school. It had a gun sight, and in the gun sight was a drawing of a stereotypical Arab on a camel, and it said, "I'd fly 10,000 miles to smoke a camel." There were a lot of nasty jokes like that. In the media, Saddam Hussein was portrayed as a fanatic or a terrorist, and that was linked to the fact that he is an Arab. Seeing that stuff started to make me think further consciously about the fact that I am Arab. I am an Arab, and yet I had this other side to me. It was undeniable that I was white also, and a lot of my friends were white. Once I got out of high school, I started thinking about this further and further. I recognized how distanced I was in a lot of ways from my Arabness, and I worked truly hard to go in the opposite direction, to almost to an almost silly degree, where I was only hanging out with Arabs and other people of color. I wouldn't hang out with white people that much, and I made conscious choices about the music I listened to, Arab or black music. I had listened to further white music or mainstream rock and roll when I was in high school, and the way I dressed changed a little bit. My clothes were associated with hip hop. The clothes I wore in high school were associated with alternative music. I think I was consciously trying to not be white, and that lasted a little while. Actually, that's when I started writing poetry a lot. I wrote to try to resolve things. I can't stress enough how important that was, as much as sorting out some of the different things that were going on in my head. My biracial identity is something I'm probably going to be negotiating my whole life. It's not anything that bothers me any further. Most of my friends are Arab or black or Asian, but that hasn't been a conscious choice. It's just that's the social scene that I've been into. A lot of my friends are white also. There's no longer a consciousness of whiteness that used to be there. My major in is American culture. It's an interdisciplinary program. It's got aspects of sociology, ethnic studies, American history, literature, all of these things rolled into one. I've been interested in doing research on Arab American communities. There's truly not much acknowledgement of Arab Americans, even though there are, by some reports, 3 million of us in this country. Arabs are in a very strange position in that in some areas we are regarded as white to a certain extent, and then in other areas, like in the South during Jim Crow, several Arab Americans were lynched because they were looking at white women and they were considered colored by the KKK. It's truly weird. Race and ethnicity are obviously social concepts. They're not biological. They're not genetic things. Like to say black people is a truly weird generalization. And even further to say white people. Does that include Italians or Jews? I'm interested in looking at what and when and where makes someone white and what and when and where makes someone not white or black or whatever. Arabs are the perfect group in which to study those questions because their place in society is very ambiguous. So this is a biographical note at the end of it. It says, Saladin has performed his poetry as a member of Detroit's 1997 National Poetry Slam team. He is also a winner of the 1997 Metro Times Literary Contest. So that's the bio. Now it includes presumably a poem of his. It doesn't have his authorship listed here directly, but it's immediately following that article. So presumably it's one of the poetry poems that he's referenced. So I am going to include that in the storytelling session. So this is entitled Serving the Needs of the Multi-Ethnic Community, for a small fee, of course. Ha ha ha. Here it is. I'm working on my own series of flashcards. No further. Hellish images of mad-faced clowns somersaulting over 3+3 figures in that traumatic dance that makes some kids forever avoid math. Now, special for mixed babies. Flashcards of ethnic ambiguity. And drill time will go something like this. Question. Slightly puffed out hairdo, plus Carhartt jacket, plus Ankh necklace that from a distance looks like a crucifix. Answer. Let's see. That would be, hey Holmes, give up some love, essay, to the 10th power of homophobic hug withdrawal when he recognizes my name ain't Los. Question. Hair grown long, combed out, very straight, and pulled back in a ponytail, plus slight tan divided by beaded necklace, equals, that one's easy. Oh, I just love Pocahontas. It had such a positive message. You people are so in tune with nature. We could have learned so much. Too bad we killed off 9 out of 10 of you. Question. Deeper tan, plus hair puffed out even further, plus hoodie multiplied by rolling with kids named Anton, and Quandores. Answer. I'll guess it's that boy's got to be a quadroon or something trying to pass. Shit. Question. Month-long growth of facial hair minus friendly Western voice plus keffiyeh around neck to the square root of crazy look in eyes equals Answer. Oh man, I know this one. He's a greasy, smelly Islamic fundamentalist terrorist, so we better search his ass before he gets on that plane. I'm telling you, I'm going to change the face of education. So that is the brother Saladin Ali Ahmed. That's the story for today. Oh, and there goes the lighting, because there we go. All right. So a lot of thoughts. I can see a lot of thoughts actually from that joint. Um, one of the thoughts is, first of all, probably one of the things I appreciate most at this moment, after reading it just today, again, after not reading it for the past 2 years or so, one of the things I appreciate most is that he talks about the struggle, he talks about the difficulty, but not in a woe is me kind of, oh, look at me, give me some alms or whatever else like that. He's like, yo, these are challenges. It's life. Here's what I've learned. Here's what I'm doing. And I'm building from it. So it's not the tragic trope. It's the transcendent trope. And it's like doing it. So there's appreciation for that. Now, one of the things that's particularly interesting in the Mélanger convo on this continent is his experience of being having Arab heritage, because there are certain ethnic diasporae within humanity on the earth where Mélanger is absorbed in a somewhat unique way, particularly Arab and Latino, which are both comparatively Mediterranean, which is interesting, but there's an absorption that's distinct from how Mélanger brethren are absorbed amongst Europeans and also amongst Africans, maybe perhaps also amongst East Asians, and perhaps even South Asians. But anyways, it's an interesting experience and paradigm. So it's one of the reasons why I share it at the moment. And what I observe is like the same thing with mixed brethren who have Latino heritage. It's that you often can't. I'll say this. I'll put it this way: for people who identify as mixed, like predominantly, who are like for activists that I've observed who identify as mixed Latino, usually, first of all, yes, I'm saying Latino before I get to Arab, but usually such individuals, actually, first of all, Latino itself is like an amalgamation of different ethnicities. It's not just Iberian. That's the norm amongst the Latino experience. And I'm speaking from someone who might be considered an outsider. But that's my experience amongst Latino brethren, and that's my observation. So that's that's a fact, effectively. But that being said, when it comes to being mixed, Mélanger specifically, and identifying as that, particularly in this northwestern quadrant, usually what I've observed is that Mélanger brethren who identify as Mélanger or as mixed or multi-ethnic or whatever, who have Latino heritage, usually also have European heritage, and that the mixedness is kind of like the Latino being the otherness that's being absorbed or assimilated or brought into connection with the European mainstream. And so that's the nature of the mixedness, rather than specifically recognizing just being Latino as being mixed. And if you want to question me about like that Latino being mixed, look at the population statistics and demographics of Latin nations. So, anyways, there's that. Now, when it comes to Arab, again, the Ummah, how is mixed race absorb, because again, I mentioned previously, like there's all different types of ethnic um, uh, composites within the experience of Islam, within the diaspora, within the Ummah, from Indonesia, Bangladesh, Malaysia, India, Pakistan, to Egypt, Iraq, Iran, the Arabian Peninsula, um, Morocco, Libya, Tunisia, all different types of ethnicities that are indigenous that come from those lands. So that when people from those different places, all being Muslim, intermarry and have children together, what is the recognition of that bond and that being mixed? Uh, so this is another example. It's a brother who's Arab and recognizes that. Talks about he said his Lebanese and Egyptian, which are very similar in terms of ethnic um, composite, aggregately speaking. Um, but he's also coming from the experience of being also having European heritage, and so he's identifying as being mixed. He was recruited or signed up to participate in Sister Pearl's book. It's getting wet. Wata. Whoa. The rain done picked up as it come down. So I'm not feeling it though. Alright. Interesting. Because it's all up on this joint too. So anyways, how much is the mixed experience recognized, talked about, addressed, supported, cultivated amongst or within the Ummah specifically, or is it just a matter of all we're all Muslim, and so we don't look at racial distinction this and the other. We also know better, but anyways, interesting consideration and an interesting voice to include within that experience. So, what propensity do Melange brethren have in the Ummah and amongst Latino brethren and within additional ethnic communities and diasporae? What motivation, what propensity is there of identifying as mixed, even whilst being immediately within that fold, and even identifying primarily within that fold? We got fly. Oh, now I feel that. That's the wind right there, bringing in that water. Oh, we might have to close up. The wind done picked up. That's what picked up. The rain coming down, but the wind picked up. Yeah, I think we're gonna move because it's getting in. So we can do the rest standing style. We got some lights. There you go. So yeah, I might want to move the chair too. Or what we can do is the rain pick up. The rain pick up. Aha. Have a seat. Relax. Be cozy. Cougar. Wipe off that water from your laptop. Continue on. So it's an interesting consideration, and it's a valuable, treasured voice to include and to listen to within our Melange experience. A lot of the perspective and the voices within our Melange joint come from Creole. I gotta still look up that word too, what the etymology is of that word. But Creole or Hapa, those are like the primary voices, at least in the the Northwest Quad, that talk about the mixed experience. So it's beneficial to get other voices as well. Brethren who come from Latino and Habibi and Desi and native. Wow, wow, look at me. I'm avoiding all of that. And that's another paradigm to consider, to learn from, to holler at, because Meti are doing things. Meti are organized. Um, Meti are recognized. Meti are sovereign. And continuing to get increasing recognition as such as well. And that those are very valuable lessons. And it also provides consideration of like how important is being mixed compared to other forms of identifying, other forms of organizing, communicating, identifying. We can do it more further than once, which reminds me of I didn't do the mixed heritage Bill of Rights joint earlier this week. So we're doing that at the close of these joints. Well, I'm thinking about wrapping this up because I've done some long joints already, and let's see if that there. Like I said, that narrative is has a lot of substance. We can talk about class. When he talks about labor class, merchant class, the move from one place to another, and the different ethnic makeup. We can make some certain presumptions about the socioeconomic makeup. The difference between Dearborn and Ann Arbor. That location is very proximate to where I'm sitting at the moment, so I have familiarity with that, and I have brethren in the area as well. So I'm keen on the distinctions within the area. Plus, Detroit is very similar to the Cuyahoga area in terms of being an industrial factory kind of blue collar community. Um, we've got to university as well, in addition. So, anyways, um, what will be interesting is hearing the follow up on this. Now, he wrote that 20 years ago, um, so he was majoring. Oh, and here's the gripe or the challenge. It's very frustrating actually, and still making strides to get beyond that. But even amongst our Melange brethren, there tends to be this kind of like um, settling within this trope of settling within America, and just perceiving America as just or the norm of America as just some kind of like Shangri-La, and obviously it's not that, but that's what it promises to be, and so getting enveloped in that kind of like rhetoric, and kind of just like not compromising, settling, acquiescing, or being complacent within that rhetoric, when the actuality we very much know is different than that. And we will acknowledge, oh yeah, we've got a lot to work on this and that, but no, it's fundamentally messed up. It's not the answer. That's not the thing to assimilate into. America is intrinsically racist. America is intrinsically classist and genocidal, killing 9 out of 10 native brethren. When less than, or when about 1% of an entire continent is the native people of that continent. That's genocide, Jay. And it's not some kind of like historical. It's going on right now. So, anyways, I don't mean to be getting on my trope, but the thing is, like, if we're going to talk about this racial harmony and like be recognized and be honored and being honored and supported additionally, we have to be honest about what the conditions are and where we're going to. And um, it's like it's frustrating because cats talk about the struggle not to assimilate and not to give up their culture, but then looking at America or American studies as the solution. It's like, what are you talking about? You just quoted Malcolm X and the American Indian movement. How are you going to talk about? I'm not coming hard at Brother Saladin. I'm just saying this is a frustration that I experienced just dealing with Melange brethren thoroughly for years and through today, of just settling within the mainstream, and with the perception of that, or the presumption, or the resignation of that being satisfactory, or that even being healthy. It's not. It's not healthy. It's not supportive, and it's not nurturing, and it's not conducive towards raising children who are healthy and nurtured and supported. So to do that, to be healthy, and to raise healthy children, comprehensively healthy, uh, it's a matter of finding another answer, another paradigm of pluralism that is genuinely supportive of one's heritage, one's ancestry, one's identity, our heritage, our ancestry. Um, so seriously, I'm not. This ain't sour grapes. This is like just plain rationale. So, anyways, when he talks about studying American studies, ethnic American studies, or whatever it was, it's just like, oh, wait a minute, ah. So it'd be interesting to see what his perspective is, what his viewpoint is today, what he's doing today, 20 years later, how he's using that degree, and additionally, presuming he got it. What have been his triumphs? What have been some of his challenges and the lessons gleaned, and what the decisions, getting married, having children, and how to raise those children, and additionally. So uh, that's a lot of consideration for this session. Um, Anything else? Uh, I'll say another thing I appreciate is that I appreciate him like describing that progression through basically just kind of like growing up and not being mindful of race, and then when seeing it on the media and hearing it, and particularly having experiencing the events and seeing the racist things going on, responding to that and kind of like going and doing a 180 and kind of being rebellious and this and the other, and then eventually kind of mellowing out and being increasingly balanced and just like being less pressed about it, being increasingly confident within oneself. I resonate with that. That resonates with me. Vice versa, versa versa, same old, same old. Um, I can identify with that. I have a lot of that same experience. Um, there's a certain also a continuity through that experience as well. The essence of who we are amidst all the ebbs and flows and the negotiations and navigations of people and social interaction and religious, spiritual, ethnic, cultural interaction. Um, so that balance, that homeostasis, um, that sense of self, that knowledge of self. I'm getting into the catchphrases at this point. It's catch concepts. Catch. Um, Anything else? I'll say one other thing that was interesting when he talks about his grandfather, his farfar, uh, being an immigrant, moving here and selling Arabic language records. Obviously, that's a number of years ago. He wrote that himself 20 years ago. So if he's talking about his grandfather, who's probably 40 years older than him, so that would have been nearly 60 years ago. So you think that's the main way people communicate, recorded music and things like that. I think these days there are other ways of learning language, but um, I think to myself, who's learning Arabic 60 years ago? Interesting. Enough for somebody to actually be to move from one place to another, from one continent to another, and make a living off that. Interesting. Obviously, Dearborn is a favorite place to do that. Uh, but then I think to myself, what kind of skills does he have to be able to do that effectively? Does he know somebody in Dearborn that just like, oh, tutelage and show him the ropes, or does he like know himself, like recordings in the diaspora, um, from which to draw from, and distributors and deals? I read things like, yo, I could sell these when I get over there, or this and the other. They're gonna want to learn Arabic. I should be able to sell this. And then what's the extent of the product offering? Like how extensive are the records? Is it just like basic learning? Is it like advanced learning? Is it advanced Quranic studies? Are there additional reading materials that go with that? Is there thoughts of starting a bookstore with that? So, anyways, that's just kind of like it may seem random, but yo, moving from one continent to another, that's a big thing. And again, he might have been planning to do that or needed to do that one way or the other, and so he just found out about selling Arabic language records. But um, that when that's part of being melange, because it's part of understanding the ebbs and flows, the movements, the migrations of people, why they're moving, and how our parents, how our forebears make a living, and how people like this with such a mindset to interact with people who are different. How can such individuals continue maintain economic ties with a supporting community? What is it that the community values that they provide, um, and how do we cultivate that amongst ourselves as we further that heritage and tradition and that balance of the pragmatism and the ideology, the pragmatism of prosperity and putting food on the table, and that ideology of pluralism and harmony amongst our differences. So, again, that's it. That's just another interesting thought. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Oh, we got the Bill of Rights. Winds have subsided somewhat. Well, actually, the rains have subsided. The wind's actually picking up. You can see the leaves. Let's see. Do you see it? Do you see it? No, I don't know. It was going on just a second ago. Maybe over there. Maybe if I get out the way. There's some. There's some. It's picking up just a second ago. So, anyways, orange flying about. Mini pumpkins. So we conclude this joint. Oh, that's a wet seat. It's not that wet though. The book is kind of wet though still. We conclude the session with so the Bill of Rights for racially mixed people. It's also described as people of mixed heritage. I have the right not to justify my existence in this world, not to keep the races separate within me, not to be responsible for people's discomfort with my physical ambiguity, not to justify my ethnic legitimacy. I have the right to identify myself differently than strangers expect me to identify myself differently than how my parents identify me, to identify myself differently than my brothers and sisters, to identify myself differently in different situations. I have the right to create a vocabulary to communicate about being multiracial, to change my identity over my lifetime and further than once, to have loyalties and identify with further than one group of people, to freely choose whom I befriend and love. This is the book. Yeah, one of the reasons why I'm shaking this again, the video feed that I have on this joint is mirror thing, so it's the opposite way I'm moving. In life. That being said, namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, zaijian, adios, stay cheveries, SMP, na asumugo, kill it with it, one love.